Federal judge blocks Arkansas Delta-8 THC ban. The ruling stems from a lawsuit filed by four businesses claiming the law violates the U.S. Constitution. This was published on September 11th by Melissa Schiller in the Cannabis Business Times. So a federal judge has blocked Arkansas's ban on Delta-8 5 months after Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed legislation into law to reclassify some hemp-derived psychoactive cannabinoids as Schedule 4 substances in the state. Act 629 passed during Arkansas's 2023 legislative session, and hemp-derived Delta-8, Delta-9, Delta-6A, Delta-10, Delta-10A THC in the state, with sponsors arguing that Delta-8 in particular was being marketed to children and sold at convenience stores where clerks did not verify customers' ID. The new law took effect August 1st, but has been placed on hold following the September 7th court ruling. U.S. District Judge Billy Roy Wilson's ruling last week stems from a lawsuit filed by four cannabis-related businesses claiming that the law violates the U.S. Constitution's Commerce and Supremacy clauses, according to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Plaintiffs, Biogen LLC, Drippers Vape Shop LLC, the cigarette store, doing business as Smoker Friendly, and Sky Marketing Corporation, are hemp product marketers located in Arkansas, Colorado, and Texas, filed the lawsuit on July 31st in federal court in Arkansas, the news outlet reported. The businesses asked the court for a temporary restraining order or preliminary injunction to block the enforcement of the law while the case moves through the legal process. Huckabee Sanders, Attorney General Tim Griffin, directors of the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration, the Tobacco Control Board, the State Department of Agriculture, and the State Plant Board, and 28 prosecuting attorneys in the state were all named as defendants in the lawsuit, according to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. At an August 23rd hearing, Wilson denied the state's motions to dismiss the lawsuit and to grant Huckabee Sanders and Griffin immunity from it, according to the news outlet. Abbott, I'm not going to say his last name, and Allison Scott, the attorneys representing the plaintiffs, argued at the hearing that the law put their clients in legal and financial jeopardy over the production and sales of products they claim are federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill. Jordan Broyles, representing the state's attorney's office, argued that nothing in the federal law prohibits from passing more restrictive laws. Wilson said in a provision in Arkansas's law restricts the transportation of hemp-derived cannabinoids through the state and does indeed violate federal law. Wilson wrote in his ruling that the plaintiffs have a good chance of getting the law overturned as void for vagueness. The news outlet reported. He indicated that the plaintiffs also had a good chance of irreparable harm through criminal sanctions should the law be upheld. Wilson noted in his ruling that the potential harm to defendants is negligible, according to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. In his issuing his ruling, Wilson granted a preliminary injunction to block the state's enforcement of the law, while Griffin indicated he would continue to work to implement it, the news outlet reported. So that's it. So that's the shit show that's happening in Arkansas. It looks like, again, there's people sort of on both sides of the issue. And it's interesting that he makes reference in the article to just transporting these things through federal highways in Arkansas. Well, a couple of these producers are in Texas and California and Colorado, so they have to be transported over state lines, which I think is highly illegal too, as well. So that's my story. Interested in any of your thoughts?
Yeah, but I don't see it as highly illegal if it's a hemp product that is legal by the 2018 Farm Bill. I think these guys have an argument.
Well,
kind of see both
Yeah,
sides of it.
the issue there, Gretchen, is that if you dig into the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act, Delta-8 THC is mentioned by name under Code 7370, which was in enforcement when the 2018 Farm Bill was passed. So whether it came from cannabis or it came from hemp, Delta-8 has no molecular memory, so it's a Schedule One substance, and I think the most recent language from who's at the DEA is that anything that's been chemically converted is Schedule One.
Ooh,
well,
that's
Martin,
a new twist.
The problem still goes back to these early lines they drew about what is hemp and what's cannabis or marijuana, and they used the term Delta-9 THC. And you've an organic chemistry sense. That's a specific molecule. Now it's got an acid to it before it's decarboxylated. All that kind of stuff happens, but they put into these isomer and analog rules that if it's Delta-9 or an isomer or analog, things like that. But then you start having the hemp law come out that said if it's less than 0.3, it's now hemp, which is not illegal, which creates massive confusion in this. And across the country, if something's legal federally, you can transport it on highways. Okay, you can't block that from. I think that's a problem they had. They tried to keep it off the highways, and they're not going to allow that to happen. If we get down further in the weeds about whether they can specifically target Delta-8, Delta-10, Delta-O, whatever we're going to call it, where they take CBD and pressurize it and heat it up, or to cold and change it like they do with opioids. Now you're going to have just nothing but a shit show, and I don't know that the government can't do that at the state level. But they're in federal court.
Dale, let me play devil's advocate on this real quick with you. So this is almost like the reverse argument of the states' rights issue that we use, right? This is an instance where Arkansas is saying, yes, this is a federally passed bill, but we still are going with the supremacy clause and interstate commerce, and we're invoking that part of it. And we're saying basically that as a state, we get to decide that these substances can't be within our borders. It's an interesting argument because I see both sides of it. I see the 2018 bill providing cover for the plaintiffs and the federal government. You can't say something's legalized federally and then say it can't go on federal highways. That's a dead argument off the rip. However, I think the states' rights argument is interesting here. They will invoke the supremacy clause, but I think that they have an interesting point there. Not to take Huckabee's side or anything like that, but I can see both angles on this.
None of those isomers occur in hemp. None of them. Delta-8 does not occur in hemp. Delta-10 does not occur. None of those isomers occur in hemp. The hemp and cannabis plant makes Delta-9 configured cannabinoids. And any minuscule amount of Delta-8 is an artifact of the HPLC sample of that plant material. So Delta-8 does not naturally occur in the plant, period. I mean, that's the misconception that's out there that needs to be cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the gap that attorneys found, quite frankly, was that they list Delta-9 THC or they allow THCA. Okay? Those are what are specifically stated in the federal level. Now the DEA is trying to expand it, and whether they have the power to do that, because the hemp law says if it comes from hemp and it's less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, now it's hemp. And so there's cracks in there. Okay.
Yeah, but Dale, THCA is 87% THC.
I get it. But
Dr. Mark, when have they ever listened to science?
I thought that's what Joe Biden was all about.
What do you talk about?
I thought that's what President Biden was all about. Listen to the science.
Don't bring me back.
To tell you how uninformed Biden is, it wasn't until he incorporated Bernie's planks into his campaign that he changed his position on cannabis because he was against cannabis. But he's for states' rights and he's for medical, but he wants to move this to Schedule 3. He's so uninformed that doesn't know that those things are not consistent with each other.
Exactly.
He was at the Twin Towers the day after they fell. Guy.
Meanwhile, Bo is, or I'm sorry, not Bo. Hunter is ripping rails in the White House.
Yeah, he is. Oh man, on the
Nancy
presidential
Reagan
mirrors.
was the child of an alcoholic family, and you know, Mark, when you go see a psychiatrist, tell him my parents were alcoholics. They put you into a category. Holy fuck. Okay, so you got a kid who's a coke addict. And now you've got all sorts of emotional reactions about drugs that wouldn't exist if you were objective. So I get it. It's just it's fucking frustrating as hell.
We